I'm Dr. John Kruse, and today I'm going to be talking about beware of your media intake, or treat your news like medication and get the dose that's right for you. In today's world, cell phones, social media, constant access to the internet bombard all of us with news information 24/7. In the old days, we could separate what was social media from news. Now they blur together. I'll be focusing on what's more traditionally called news, but I'm not making a distinction between what is news and social media here. So most of what I say pertains to both. And we live in a chaotic, interesting world. There's important elections going on. There's wars in various parts of the world. Weather problems are increasing because climate change is worsening. There's exciting sports events. So there's all sorts of things going on all the time. And many of us are overwhelmed, freaked out by our doom scrolling. And there's a simplistic answer to that, and that is to be mindful. And being mindful means getting the dose of media that's right for you. So treating it like a medication. Different people need different doses. A slightly more detailed answer of what's getting the right dose for you is, and being mindful, is figuring out why right now, this very moment, you're engaging in whatever intake of news, social media you're doing. So a different way of framing some of that message is, in a world where politics have degenerated, climate change is yet abated, Olympic excitement's barely faded, inflation fears are overstated, all of us are saturated. So we're all getting too much information too fast, it's too fragmented, there's no or little context, and it's designed to feed on our emotions, not our thoughtful parts of our brains. Much of this is very intentional. So the big tech companies, the social media companies, the news organizations know that eyeballs sell ads. They've spent millions of dollars on behavioral scientists, psychologists, and others that have designed their product to hook you and to keep you watching, to keep you clicking, to keep you reading, to keep you sticking to their site, because that sells advertising, that brings in advertising dollars for them. And unlike a gymnast who wants to stick her ending, they want to stick it to you. They have no desire for their stickiness to end or for there to be any ending for you. How we process information, how we gather information, there's been a lot of research over the years and some slight oversimplifications, but pictures are much more easily evocative emotions than words are. Doesn't mean powerful words can't stir up feelings. They absolutely can. But in general, pictures are much more potent in doing this, and they do it more quickly. So viewing a powerful image or an emotionally laden image doesn't have to be horribly dramatic. It can just be a smile versus a frown. In just 15 milliseconds of viewing that image, that's enough to change the emotional state of individuals. And most of the information for processing words, for reading a word, is that it takes at least 150 milliseconds, so 10 times as long to get much basic information understanding out of that one single word. And we know also that when a powerful image changes emotions, it can change emotions enough that that alters our behavior without any conscious awareness that the emotion being produced or elicited in a person. So in a laboratory situation where people respond differently after seeing a vivid image, most of them have no awareness that their feeling state changed, mediating that change in their behavior. There's also been a fair amount of research, some of it's inconsistent, looking at the differences between reading words and listening to words. And a few things. One is it's clear they activate different sensory processing networks, so visual, unless you're blind and doing it through Braille, visual parts of the brain are lit up by reading, by listening, it's auditory cortex and others. But part of the brain processing that involves in processing the words themselves seem to be very similar, if not identical, for processing. Once it gets to the level of processing word and meaning, reading or listening seem to activate similar brain circuitry there. But we know that reading requires greater concentration or attention. It's really hard to read if you're doing something else at the same time, whereas lots of people are knitting or wiping down the counters or walking around while there are listening to a podcast or listening to other sources of information. We also know that reading is actually more efficient than listening. So you can take in information at a faster rate when you're reading than you are listening to a sound cast, even if the person is speaking faster than my slow rate of speaking. How can we use this information? What do we do about being mindful? So again, I said the first part of being mindful is sorting out why. Why are you doing this? And that emphasizes there isn't a set answer as to what's a good amount of social media and news media exposure each day or each week or each month. That you need to adjust the dose according to you. If you are a television pundit and make your life out of commenting on what's happening each day in the political cycle, then you do need to be gathering lots of information, seeing what people are doing and what people are responding to. Most of us don't have a life that's based on that. The dose that works for you, it's going to vary from person to person. It's going to vary with your situation, both in generally what's going on and what's going on right now today. So you may have to adjust or you may have more time to take in, depending on what is or isn't going on today. And it's also going to vary with the content. I mean, there are more newsworthy items or important things do come up that may be worth your time and effort to focus on and take in. Why do we pay attention to these things? So one generally good cause or reason is to get information or to be learning. And I'd say in a democracy, the democracy is based on an informed public. So yes, it's good to stay informed. But when I say stay informed, that doesn't mean you have to be plugged in 24/7, because the vast majority in the old days, that's when I was a kid, mostly morning newspapers. There were some evening newspapers. So some people read a newspaper twice a day. There were morning news hours broadcasts and there were evening broadcasts. So some people would watch maybe an hour twice a day. They weren't being exposed 24/7. And part of it, it's not that there aren't things going on all the time. There clearly are. But if you look at any of the news broadcasts, they have huge amounts of repetition. They're saying the same thing over and over and over again. And more so, the content isn't even primarily news or information. Big chunks of it are speculation. What's going to happen if this candidate says that? What's going to happen if this storm moves 5 miles an hour faster at a different direction? Speculation is not news. It's not information. It might be important in some situations to be plugged into it or be aware of it, but it itself is not news. A lot of it is also just opinion or people's assessment of what this means or what the importance is, which is a different form of speculation. So, for example, you didn't need to see, I'm dating myself, going back 20 plus years, you didn't need to watch 17 times the Twin Towers in New York falling down to process what's going on. You didn't need to see a presidential candidate's ear get bloodied 15 times to figure out what's going on. You could certainly see it that many times or more if you kept watching and tuning in. But again, that's not necessary for if you were interested in the information, you can say, okay, I've got that already. I've seen it. I've processed it. The other thing is that even when there is news that's evolving, so election tallies are coming in from each county, or there's a murderer on the run from jail and the manhunt is tracking where police are searching each week, or there's an earthquake and they're tallying each hour the death toll from the earthquake. Most of what's important to that story is the ending of it. A year later, it doesn't matter whether Madison County got its votes in before Washington County or whether part of the ballots were delayed and part of them showed up later. What matters is the final tally. What matters is whether the convict got arrested or captured or not. What matters may be the death toll from the earthquake, but not how quickly people were able to count it or process it. So even with evolving stories, most of the information isn't really significant information. Again, if you're a news reporter, if your job depends on getting that much information, if you enjoy it, fine, watch it. But otherwise, getting back to why am I watching this? If the answer is information, then the response should be, okay, I have my information and no more new information is coming in for the next several hours. Now, one subset of information, and this is a little more social media directed, is people comparing themselves to others. People go on to see what their friends are doing, what dresses they're wearing, how much money they have, where their vacations are going. Or, and this is where it blurs into the real news, you know, who the Kardashians are dating, or who's the winner on this reality show, or what someone's wearing, or who they're dating, or what they've said about someone else. Much of what people are doing is comparing themselves to others. And there's several good studies that have shown the more time people spend doing that, watching that, consuming that, the more their image is negative, self-image is negative. It sort of reinforces, I'm not as good as those people out there. And a really important slogan borrowed from AA, and my phrasing of it is this, is don't compare your insides to their outsides. So when people present on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok is usually their best dance moves or prettiest cake they baked or highlights from their vacation. It's not every moment of their day. It's not an uncensored portrayal of what's actually going on in their lives. It's a highly collated, prepared for outward consumption. So you don't know how happy they are. You don't know how content they are. You don't know what the battles went in behind the scene. And yet you're comparing all of what you know about yourself to their external appearance. Separate from information, I'd say it's related to it, but there's fear of missing out, FOMO. It's so popular, it has its own acronym. And recent studies have shown that FOMO is a significant source of stress and burnout in people's lives. And my two approaches, again, if you're aware of, I'm just watching this or looking at this because I'm afraid I'm going to miss out, two different things. One is accepting you have limits. Even if you watch 24/7, which wouldn't give you much time to eat or brush your teeth or other sleep, you're not going to know everything. We are well past the point in time, if it was ever really there, where a single human could know everything about the world around us. It's difficult. It may be tricky, but accepting limits is important. And then flipping it around can be useful, looking at it the other way. If you're not the first to know something, you're actually giving a gift to whoever it is in your circle who's the one to announce the results of the special election, or the name of the new infectious agent in a different part of the world that's killing people, or whatever that information is. If you're not the first, you're allowing someone else to inform you. You're allowing them to be the star or the bearer of information. So that's a gift you're giving to them. That's a helpful, useful way to look at FOMO, or flip it around. And the other thing, and this gets back to some of the information I was saying earlier, if it's not actionable, then the timing when you learn about it doesn't really matter. So there's a very few instances where timing may matter. If there is a storm descending on your neighborhood and yet this morning it looked sunny and you go out without your umbrella, that might be actionable. If you know that there really is a storm, then you'll be prepared for it. Or if a wildfire is heading your direction, but it's not yet within visible sight, that might be actionable information. But even really big events like, the death of your favorite movie star or rock star or a world leader, that might be interesting, but once they're dead, they're dead. And if you learned the second they died, that might be interesting. If you learned an hour later or 3 days later, it doesn't change the fact they're still dead. Again, the timing that information to you is not going to have any real impact on your life. So third reason to be taking in social media and news media is for inspiration, for motivation. People seek out things that are beautiful, things that are funny, things that are inspiring that other people have been doing. But again, getting back to being mindful about it, if you want to see someone growing beautiful gardens, watch a few minutes of it, but then pay attention. Wait a minute. If this is what I've been inspired to do, I should go out and do it, or I should be ordering seeds or ordering planting equipment or acting on it, not just if you're using it for inspiration, then you have to move beyond the inspiration to the movement and the action. And a subset of inspiration is anger. Anger is one of our most empowering, activating emotions. It may be helpful for you to remind you of the unfairness of a certain situation. That can empower you to fight for change, struggle for change, get people to vote, whatever it is. But if all you're spending time on is watching something that makes you angry and getting angry and angrier without a plan for how you're going to direct that anger, how you're going to channel it, how you're going to use it, then it's counterproductive at some point. So fourth reason people may use social media or spend their time on news and social media, and that is to sort of rest, restore, zone out. And I think this is a valid, useful use. Couple things there. One is make sure that the content fits with that's what you're doing. If you're saying, I need to take a break, I need to take a rest, and that you're getting all agitated about the polling results in an obscure state, or someone's comments at a recording studio about another musician or X, Y, or whatever it is, if the content isn't helping you to rest, restore, or zone out, then you need to adjust the content. Again, being mindful of what you're trying to get out of this experience helps you to tailor it so that it does that. And the other important thing when you're using media, social media, to zone out, rest, take a break, have a duration planned that, okay, I can spend a half hour watching cat videos, or okay, I have, maybe an hour to watch the clips of the last week's baseball highlights, or whatever it is that you're using to rest, restore, get out of misery in your daily life. And if you have a set duration and okay, I'll be getting back to my job, or I'll be getting back to my homework, or I'll be getting back to painting the house, or whatever it is, then you actually have greater enjoyment of that activity when you're doing it, because half of your mind isn't thinking, oh my God, I have to get to that, I have to get to that. Okay, I'll be doing this for an hour, and then I'll be doing other things I need to take care of. So the other reminder there is that it's also good when you're being mindful and asking, okay, is sitting here in front of my phone, fiddling my thumbs, the best way to rest or relax or zone out? And it's good to have a list of other restorative activities. It might be 5 minutes of sitting and meditating. It might be going out for a walk. It might just be sitting on a park bench in nature. It might be playing Sudokus or doing something else. So it's good to have alternatives, especially alternatives that may be more precisely tailored to helping you rest, restore, or zone out. And then I'll put in sort of a fifth thing, and I think maybe a majority of time for many people on news media, social media, is actually just killing time, zoning out, being oblivious, or sort of bored. And again, I think mindfulness is part of the cure for that. If you think, wait a minute, why am I doing this right now? If my answer is just because I can't think of anything else to be doing it, then I would try to immediately put it down and think of, again, as I said in the previous section, having a list of restorative fun activities. If again you find something that's, if you like watching cat videos, there's nothing wrong with that. But again, be mindful of why you're doing it and what it's providing you with. So some of these recommendations are reinforcing the notion that it's a good thing to have time limits. Again, I think the values are it contains the doom scrolling or spending time in these media situations. And 2, it helps you, if you're doing them for something enjoyable, to be more present in enjoying it, because you know that it is limited and I do have time in the day to take care of these other activities. So you're not just, as you're playing a half hour of Minecraft, thinking, oh my God, I should be doing my report. If you know, no, I'm just doing this for a half hour. I'll get my timer at the end, and I will know that I do have time to do my work for today. For many people, given particularly that either the computer or the phone that they're engaging in media on already has a clock right there built in, just sort of checking that periodically can be helpful. But if you know that you get sucked in too intently, if you know you're hyper-focused on whatever you're engaged in, even if it's non-productive, set an alarm, set an alert. That's pretty easy to do with any of our devices. If alarms and alerts alone are not sufficient, then all of these devices have ways to lock themselves. You can lock yourself out of an app. So FaceTime shuts off at 10 p.m. or the device itself, you can set it up. There's dozens and dozens of apps out there to set it up. So nope, my phone is turned off at midnight and I can't get on it till 8 hours later, so I have time to sleep. Also, to reinforce these time limits, particularly at bedtime, put your phone in a different room. Don't go to bed with it. Another way is to use social networks. So asking your kids, asking your spouse, even asking friends to check in. And if you see me an hour from now still watching cat videos, tell me to get off my butt and do something. Or even that people don't have to be immediately present. They can be remote friends. You can say, can you just text me at 6 every afternoon for evening to see if I'm still sucking this time waste rather than doing what I want to be. So getting back to gathering information, my strong preference is that rather than watching videos, usually reading is a better way. And by better, I mean it's more efficient. In the same amount of time, you can usually gather more information. 2, you're usually more attentive and focused when you're doing it. So it does take more effort. 3, you're more likely to be thoughtful when it's going on. Because again, most of the viewing mediums are also including pictures, which are tapping into your emotional responses and reactivity rather than your thinking and processing and cognitively putting it in context. And, particularly if it is the news itself, I am a big fan of the newspaper edition versions of the newspaper. So I think with the New York Times, they call it the replica edition. So that looks just like a newspaper. And if you go through the 3 sections or whatever, in a half hour or however much time, then you have a sense of completion, that you have a sense of, okay, I've read enough for what the New York Times or whatever journals editors think is a reasonable person might learn in a given day or know or be exposed to. If you're just searching and getting the information on the internet, it always links to another article, another article, another article. There's no clear ending because there's no clear limit to how much time they could spend on a day. You could spend all your time on it, but that's usually not helpful. Pay attention to the sources that you're using for your information. Now, if you're getting your information from a source that has paid $750 million and agreed that they had been lying to the public, I would say you should be pretty suspicious of that. Reputable sources of information correct their errors. They have a system for saying, we were wrong about this, and this is the accurate information. If your source of information never acknowledges it was wrong, then they are either perfect or lying. It's important to see what your source of information is describing as their sources. How are they getting information? Who do they cite? What research or what individuals are they according to? How well are they accounting for inconsistent facts? Are they presenting greater context, or are they just cherry picking that 2 minutes or 2 seconds a candidate gave a frowny face or looked uncomfortable or slipped on a banana peel or whatever without showing their achievements and abilities outside of that context? And again, if something is presented always as all good, or one individual is always, always, always absolutely good and the other is always, always bad, then there's something wrong with your news source, because there's nothing in the world that's like that. Everything has some bad aspects. Almost everything you can find something good about. Mussolini did make the trains run on time. Take-home message is treat your media like a medication and get the right dose for you. Be mindful. So be happy, be healthy, and that's all for today.